Sure. Yes.
I think I have a friend who knows you too.
Oh, yeah.
From another friend from my jam. Yeah, she went to Xavier.
Okay. Small world.
Yes.
Small world. All right. Good evening, everyone. As of 6:50 p.m. Central Standard Time, there are a total of 719,669 total cases of COVID confirmed, 42,075 total deaths, 180 countries, regions affected, 186,101 U.S. cases confirmed, and 3,600 U.S. citizens have perished from this virus. This virus is like no other, and experts are still trying to learn its ways. But today, I have a special guest for you who is beating the odds and surviving COVID 19. And today, you have a front row seat of hearing his personal journey from COVID to recovery. Hello, I'm Dr. Dawn, and I welcome you to another broadcast of Live with Dr. Dawn. I ask that you share this broadcast with at least 5 people that you know. I'm honored to have Kenneth as a guest of tonight's episode. But before we hear his story, I ask that due to the nature of the story, I want to caution the caregivers of children and those who may be sensitive to the details of Kenneth's story to be mindful that how this can be emotionally impactful and to please use your best judgment for viewing. So, welcome, Kenneth.
Hello.
First of all, I praise God. I praise God from whom all blessings flow. I'm so thankful to God for your presence here today and thankful for wanting you to share your story with the world. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. I'm really appreciative of you and what you're
Yes,
doing.
yes, thank you so much. I appreciate hearing that. And I'm going to get right to it. I want to start from the very beginning, Kenneth. When
Mm.
did you first, yeah, when did you first hear about coronavirus?
I would have to say earlier this year, just paying attention to the news. I heard the news clips and the rumblings about coronavirus in China. I guess I would say maybe it kind of started picking up steam over here, maybe early February, kind of slowly but surely. And I would say by mid February, um, it was on every news clip, news channel, and it was a pretty big focus
Mm-hmm.
on the subject of coronavirus potentially having a huge impact in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
As far as coronavirus having an impact associated with social distancing, it probably was early March, right when I began my battle with it. Was when it was more so a really big deal, and that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of, and I'm hope I'm not misleading anyone on, because there may have been an ignorant side on my part, which I take full ownership on. Which honestly, going through this recovery period, became one of my frustrations. So I get it. I get it. If it's not close to home, I understand that someone may not pay as close attention as I would or my family members would. So um, this thing is serious, and I think that's the point of this entire dialogue that you and I are having. That I think
Mm-hmm.
people should really walk away with.
That's right. Do you recall being, well, let me ask you, when you heard about the coronavirus and the implications of COVID 19, of course, it's starting in China, making its way to Italy and different parts of the world, and finally, to the US, and still what makes its way all over the world. What were your like feelings about this virus? Did you have any feelings or any preconceived notions about this? Because we've been here before in different variations, right?
Right. So I never had any preconceived notions about it. I believe it was my mom that really began speaking to me about it. And so, just to be transparent, so I'm 36 years old. I have a terrible habit of biting my nails. I mean, my twin brother and I, we've done it for years. And to be honest, that was the focal point when my mother called me. It was more so about, listen, this is what's going on. You're going to have to stop biting your nails. Like, literally, I know I've been talking to you about this for years, but this thing is serious. because at the time she was paying more attention to it than I was. So
Mhm.
her things was just making sure that we were being cautious, washing our hands, keeping my hands out of my mouth because I get nervous, I get bored, I could be driving, I'm biting my nails.
Mhm.
So breaking that habit because of this is how my mom really began to just drill it in me.
Yes, yes. So would you say that you were actually following, the sanitary measures? And no offense, because who thinks of, well, we're bringing something in the house, we'll take off our clothes. Like, I'm sure it wasn't at that point that far, right?
Right.
And so you probably just washing your hands, making sure that whatever you
More.
touch, yeah, please.
So yes, we definitely took more precautions. Of course, my wife helped me with the house. So, but there was more hand washing. There was more wiping down after we completed using something. So,
Mhm.
if we're sorry, if we're in the kitchen and we putting some stuff away, the first thing we do, we're gonna Lysol it down, disinfect. It got to a point even with our beds, we
Mhm.
began washing our linen more often and actually
Mhm.
spraying the Lysol to disinfect. It just became a normal routine. Um, Little did we know that I would be the one that would be admitted for COVID-19.
Right. Is there any situation or incidents or gathering that you could think back that where you might have been exposed to someone or someone telling you that they weren't feeling well or any situation?
I believe I know exactly where I caught it, and I'll be honest. And my daily schedule is it's a routine.
Mm-hmm.
From home to work, I pick up my daughter every day, and I go to the gym. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It definitely was the gym where I began to feel ill. And it was almost like an immediate impact where I literally began to feel my body shutting down. It was a Tuesday. I
Mm-hmm.
trained in a small group setting. I think it was
Mm-hmm.
maybe 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember after the training, my body began to feel extremely cold.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is ironic because in my particular gym, the heat is always on 80 plus degrees.
Oh,
So
wow.
yes, so it's a boot camp setting. You're gonna sweat. Of course, it's a lot of germs, but
Right.
the
Interesting.
me feeling cold was extremely odd. So I just remember
Mm-hmm.
telling two of my frat brothers who I was around, brother, like, listen, I'm not feeling right. Like I'm freezing. And the first
Mm-hmm.
thing we all assumed was get out of those wet clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because we're sweating. Okay. I take off my clothes because I always bring a change. I put on the t-shirt and a sweatshirt over it. Of course, after drying up, I still was freezing.
Wow.
I was freezing. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So did you
So
automatically assume that something was going on physically? Like you had, like the flu, right? I mean, when you're in warm environments and thinking that you're very cold, is this the first thought that came to your mind or?
yes, that was the first thing in my mind that it was the flu. Um, so, and I'm gonna back up for a minute, just
Yeah,
not to get
please.
off subject,
No,
but
please.
people who go to the gym. So I just got back
Continue to tell the
serious
story.
working
I'm
out.
sorry, my dog is barking. Please
I
continue to
understand.
share.
I understand. We People who go to the gym, once we get serious, for some reason, and feel free to comment and let me know if you agree or disagree. For some reason, there are times when we get the mind frame of if we get sick, any type of illness, for some reason, our mindset immediately goes to, oh, I can go to the gym, I can sweat it out. I can
Mhm.
go to the gym, I can sweat it out. I believe that became, especially with what's going on now with COVID-19, that could be one of the worst things that we as gym members do. Decide that we're going to go to the gym, even if we feel ill, and thinking that we're going to sweat it out.
Mhm.
Because on this particular day, I just thinking back now and being honest with myself, I was not feeling my best. I knew it before I walked in. And after the workout, my level of discomfort went from 4 to 15 on the scale
Wow.
from 1 to 10.
Wow.
So from that day forward, that's when everything went downhill. I just remember calling my doctor the next morning and trying to figure out how soon could he see me. I didn't know what was going wrong. But the next morning I did take my temperature and it was 102. So I knew it was a fever at that point. I just didn't know what else was wrong. So
had you ever felt, can you compare any, well, I'm gonna ask this question later. I'm gonna ask this question. I guess my question is, there's so many common symptoms or symptoms that are becoming a little bit more common that we're hearing more about, to help alert people that, hey, these are the 3 common symptoms. You hear often about the headache, you hear about, the shortness of breath, right? Yes. People are hearing about a cough or a dry cough. But now people are saying fatigue. They're saying, like, I went from, like you're describing, 4 to 15 in a matter of moments or minutes, and thinking, like, wait a minute, something is wrong, right? Versus this is just probably something, I'm coming down with something.
Right. So going to the fatigue, because everything happened boom, 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 boom. It was that quick for me. So the day I just mentioned to you, this was Tuesday, March 11th. I remember it like it was yesterday. This was March 11th. I actually got up knowing I wasn't feeling well with a fever. I went to work. Now, what I did when I went to work was I actually self-isolated myself into my own office. Normally, I'm sitting in the office with 3 other people. But I knew I was not at my best. I remember going on the lunch break when my staff went on lunch, and I went to my car and I passed out. I overslept. So that was my first sign. And I remember I get off work at 1:30 p.m. because I go in at 4:30 a.m. I remember calling my wife and just telling her that, baby, I'm not feeling right. Do you mind picking up, Kinley? That's my daughter. And that's something I really take pride in, is picking up my kids. And so once that happened, she helped me out. She did it. I remember immediately going home, laying down. It had to be 2:30 p.m. At that moment, I think I slept all the way to 1:00 a.m. 1:00 a.m. And I think I may have gotten up to eat like 2 oranges, because at this point my appetite is gone too. I went back to sleep and woke up at 3:45 a.m.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So speaking of, like, okay, so first for me, the fever came, the fatigue came. Now, mind you, this entire time I'm still having the fever.
Right.
So I did call the doctor, and that's when they set me up for the following day, which was the Thursday. But I had to go in as a walk-in.
I see.
Yep.
And so when you woke up the next day and you're headed to the doctor's office as a walk-in, what happens next?
So on this day, I couldn't go to work. Check my temperature. Matter of fact, I keep my thermostat close to me at all times now. But I couldn't go to work on this day. I go to the doctor. He takes my temperature. I think on this day it's 101. So he does the flu test. It comes back negative because it only takes 10 minutes for that to come back. So he treats me only for as if it's a fever that just won't break. So he prescribes, I don't know the name of the medicine, but he prescribes 2 things for me, and tells me to get the Tylenol extra strength for the fever. So I get that. This is Thursday. From that point on, my fever never broke. I think I stayed in the bed the entire weekend. As a matter of fact, I know I did.
Oh, wow.
I didn't move. It got to a point where, my oldest daughter and I, we have this antagonizing relationship where I harass her, she harasses me. And it just got to a point where all she can say was, "Daddy, you don't feel good, huh?" So that's what I did. I laid there in the entire weekend. And come Monday, it just got to the point where my wife just said, no, we're going to the ER. This is bad.
Mm-hmm.
So she's the one that forced me to go to the ER and drove me there.
Thank God.
And
Thank
at
God.
that point, that's when everything changed for me.
What changed, Kenneth? How was your experience? Let's talk about checking in to the ER, right? Are you seeing other individuals in the ER? Are you seeing other families with similar symptoms or overhearing that, people coughing, people sneezing? I mean, what is that environment like for you when you?
When I walked in the ER, it was, first of all, it was packed. Everyone had on masks. I would say 80% of the room was coughing. Um, Based on your temperature, they had the room divided into thirds. So if your temperature may have been seemed severe, you were on the far right. If it wasn't as bad, you were on the in the middle or center. And if it was something other than everything else, you were on the far left.
Wow.
They took my temperature when I went in the ER. I remember it was 103. They immediately allowed me to see the doctor who was right next to that nurse.
Yes.
And they did the what did they do? They did some type of test. It was like a heart monitor test,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So they did that first, and from there they just told me that they would call me back.
EKG.
Yes, EKG. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes. You're
Uh,
welcome.
I I would say maybe they called me back 5 minutes. I mean, they allowed me to skip many people, and when I
Mm-hmm.
went to the back, that's when I did the consultation with another nurse, and they decided to do the COVID-19 test. So listen to the viewers, whatever myth you have seen or heard about this test, it is extremely real. They really do stick the thing 8 inches in your nose, in both nostrils. So
Wow.
they did that, and from there, they decided to take me to get chest exams based
Mm-hmm.
on the cough they heard.
Okay.
I honestly, I just so happened to cough maybe 5 times, and she said, "I think we should do a chest exam."
Mm-hmm.
At that moment, for some reason, she told me that these look horrible. That wasn't really motivational, but that's what she told me.
Wow. Came out and said
Right.
it. Okay.
She said it, and she said she would call me back. So I went back to the waiting room, sat with my wife, waiting to be called back. The same nurse who did my chest exam called me back, and they took me to a room. And I just remember the nurse leaving, but maybe three nurses maybe walked in 5 minutes later. At this point, the doctors who walk in, they no longer just had on the scrubs and the mask. At
Right.
this point, they had on a shield that goes up to here over the face mask, and
Wow.
it was like a thick plastic material over the scrubs. And I'm assuming the lead nurse, she introduced herself from the disease or something disease unit.
Infectious disease.
Yes,
Yes.
that's it. And at
Yes.
that moment, she said, "Mr. Kendrick, you will not be going home today." My first question was, well, can I go tell my wife? They said,
Mm-hmm.
no, you can't leave. And that's when confusion began to set in. It was just a state of unknown. I had no clue. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that I was not going home and they were going to be keeping me. And of course, my first question is, okay, so how long? Three
Right.
days minimum. What?
Wow. Wow. Did anyone mention the potential, the possibility of why they were saying these things? Why they didn't want you to tell your wife? Why they had mentioned three
It
days on average? I mean, did they?
it wasn't
Did,
until I would say, as a matter of fact, it was a shift change when the next nurse and doctor why communicated with me what was going on or potentially going on. They told me that I could potentially be positive for COVID-19, but they won't know until several days later. So what they're going to do is treat me as if I'm already positive. And that's why they would be keeping me. But mind you, this was literally maybe an hour, hour and a half after being sent to the vet
Wow.
without notifying my wife.
Right. So how were you able to connect with your wife? Was this something that a nurse was going to be able to communicate to her, or is this, I mean,
So this is where it gets crazy. So at some point, my wife had to get bored. I believe she got hungry. No one notified her. All I know, I think I had dozed off. The door opens. It's her.
hmm,
Now, mind you, in this contagious room that
hmm,
nobody's supposed to be in, it's her. And she's like, what the hell is going on?
right.
And okay, another part. My phone's dead at this point. So
Oh,
I forgot to tell you that part. But I'm telling her, hey, they're not letting me go home. They're telling me I'm going to stay at least 3 days. And they're treating me as if I'm positive. So again, still no answers, no one to ask questions to. All we know is, hey, she can't be in this room, but you're not going home. So it was an experience for both of us.
yeah,
It was shocking,
yeah.
but we knew we had to do what we had to do to get
Mhm.
through it.
Yes, that's right. You said that they basically had a plan of starting to treat you as if you were already positive, not having the
Hmm.
test results back as you reported.
Yes.
It takes a number of days to get those back. Can you
Hmm.
talk to us and tell us what that meant? What treatment um, did they share with you, or that they start with you? Was this just isolation? Because people are getting treated differently, I guess, is what
Yes.
you shared. So.
So to be honest, the communication
Hold on one second, Kenneth. I think we're having some delay in our the Wi-Fi service here. One second for me. Sure. Okay. Uh-oh. All right, everyone. We'll be right back. I know Kenneth is going to probably reconnect. He's actually, well, I don't want to share it. I want him to share it with you, but he's actually in a space where he's not getting really good, a solid Wi-Fi signal. And so this may be experienced throughout our conversation. So just be prepared for that. But please continue to share this with everyone you know. I will share with you now the reason why I entitled this A Black Man's Story is mainly because there are a lot of African Americans that are Blacks that feel that we're immune to this virus. I've heard it from my own friends, some of my own friends. I've heard it or read it about it in news stories. I've seen it in interviews, and not just Blacks, but other cultures, other age groups, other parts of the city where you live. Many people feel that they're immune, and they're showing that behavior in basically engaging in large crowds or even in small crowds. We are under a state of quarantine for the entire nation. And the purpose of that is to contain this virus. And so with Kenneth, actually, our mutual friends had placed us in contact with each other. He was very, very excited about sharing his story because he wants you to know his personal account of what his journey has been like from beginning to end. And yet he's still going through his journey. He's not out of quarantine. I'll have him share, personally which stage of the journey he's in. But when I heard his story, he shared some of the pieces with me. It's heart wrenching on so many levels. One is what we can talk about as we wait for him to return is the type of experience he had in an acute care center. Now, I know this is not everyone's experience or hasn't been everyone's experience, but it just lets you know the state of disorganization, for example, that our systems were in and continue to be in. Here is Kenneth rejoining us, and I was just informing our audience that I know that you're in a space where the Wi-Fi it may not be its best, and I didn't want to share more than that because I want you to share kind of your
Sorry.
story. So, no, you're fine. Please, no apologies necessary. And if it goes out, we'll just reconnect. Not a problem. I want to get your story out, Kenneth, and so we appreciate it. You were mentioning before we were disrupted about treatment, and I wasn't able to hear what you were actually responding to in regards to that question. Can you hear me okay, Kenneth?
Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I
Okay.
can hear you.
As far as the treatment, communication was very minimum. The nurses and doctors at that point really didn't say much. I wasn't really in my home room yet, as they called it. They
Mm-hmm.
almost had me. It was almost like a holding room. So the doctors that came in, they put the IV in, they drew blood, and at that point, they were in and out, but didn't say much. The only communication I got at that point was, "We're just waiting for your room to become available." As a matter of fact, I believe I fell asleep. They had to wake me up so they
Wow.
could roll me to my room. I think at that point it may have been 11 p.m. Now, mind you, we went to the doctor at 11 a.m.
Right.
So
Right.
it was a long wait, but the communication piece did not occur until I got to my own room.
And so I know you asked, and I know your wife asked, what's going on? What do you think he has? Why are you trying to, hold him for 3 days? What are we waiting for? What are you treating him for? And the response was,
So at that point, my wife had to leave, so she wasn't there.
I
Um,
see.
I began to ask the questions once I got to my room, but I must say the nurse, she was more open, and there was a lot of communication in that piece. She
Okay.
definitely was telling me that, we're focusing on getting your fever down. They took my temperature seemingly every 2 hours. It seemed like,
Yeah.
and I remember her because she had the same name as my mom. She was so motherly. Her name was Barbara, and she would just what I thought was bugging me, but
Mm-hmm.
she really was looking out for me. I mean, she would always say, "Kenneth, you gotta drink your water. You gotta drink your water." I didn't have an appetite, and I just remember her. I think day 3, her sitting there. "I'm not leaving until you eat something. I gotta see you eat something." And I'm
Yes.
sitting here like, "Come on, Dr. Barber." But this it I appreciate her. I really did, because I wasn't trying to eat. I couldn't eat, and honestly, I didn't even care to drink the water, but I knew I had to.
Right, right. God sends us angels, and
Hmm.
sometimes He sends angels that may have some certain degree of characteristical features or name in this case that remind us
Yes.
of our loved ones. And I've experienced that similar too, so I know that happens. And
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for Miss Barbara.
Yes, me
Because
too.
yes, I mean, even if they did not know, there should have been some type of dialogue or communication in instructing you as a patient of what is going on. What's the next step? This, like Miss Barbara said, we're trying to get your fever down. We're trying to make sure that you're eating well. We don't know what's going on, but we're looking into it. These are the
Hmm.
people that are, some type of communication to make you feel at ease, if
Yes.
anything. Let's start there. Yes.
And
Yeah.
I will say, day one, day one was kind of. It seems to be a little bit more flexibility. Some
Hmm.
flexibility as far as with them allowing. Let's say, for example, I think I asked my wife to bring me a couple pair of shorts and some grapes. I didn't want to eat their food, but I wanted the food I like, which was grapes
Right.
and water. That's all I wanted: grapes and water, and
No, that's
and
right.
Gatorade. And so
Mm.
on that day, they allowed her to drop it off at the desk. All right.
Mm.
So
Okay.
I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna be good these days. I'm gonna be here.
Hmm.
The next day, I think I asked her to pick up some watermelon. They had and something from Smoothie King.
Hmm.
They locked the entire hospital down. She couldn't do it.
Wow.
So I no
Wow.
longer could receive anything from family. I only could eat what they brought me.
Wow.
And that's when Miss Barbara got involved in saying, baby, you need to eat. You need to
Yes.
eat.
Your
Uh,
angel.
but that's that was just a snippet so far, but the cough. So we went to discussed the fever, then the fatigue, the
Mm-hmm.
cough, especially
Mm-hmm.
with the pneumonia. I really can't describe the type of pain that I was feeling whenever I coughed. I just knew that my breathing was, I couldn't breathe. I'm not sure if any of our viewers are runners. I'm not a runner. I try, but if you assume that if you're not a runner and let's say you try to run 3 to 5 miles, that breathing that you have at the end of that run,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way it felt like I had to breathe just to get a normal breath.
Oh,
And
wow.
so oftentimes during those first 3.5 days, nights, um, I would force myself to cough. And sometimes even it led to me vomiting several times just to catch air.
Oh, my goodness.
So I mean, it was a dark time.
Yeah.
I would be lying if I told you I wasn't scared.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I think my first night, I think I just spent the night walking back wall to wall because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to go to sleep. I just didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, I would try to FaceTime. People would be asleep though, but I literally walked back and forth until I just coughed up vomit.
Oh,
And I
wow.
think I did that the first 2 nights.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the day and a half, that's when I crashed. I finally went to sleep. I was
After
out.
a day and a half of being
Yes.
away.
Yep. I crashed.
Wow. And still during this time, like you're saying, you're fatigued, coughing, can't
Yeah.
breathe, feverish. Is this fevers? Is
The
it? Are they?
fever is the fever is still staying steady between 101 and 104.
So
And
your
I think
body.
at this point, hmm,
I'm sorry. No, go ahead, please.
yeah, it was staying steady between 101 and 104. And it got to the point, it was almost like we were playing the lottery. Like they would
Wow.
put the thing in my mouth and we all would just be looking like, oh, dang. I mean, we were just hoping and
Then it would
hoping.
break. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe the fever finally broke Friday. I got there Monday. The fever finally broke Friday. But the catch was they needed to see my fever stay steady for a complete 48 hours minimum
Mm-hmm.
for me to be discharged.
Right. And that's
And
standard care. Mm-hmm. That's just
yes.
the standard. Yes.
Hmm. And I'll be honest, it got to a point, I think I got so frustrated of just being in the hospital. And not only that, I think day three, um, I think I just wanted to take a shower. I
Yeah.
wanted to take a shower so bad. And I think
Mm-hmm.
every nurse that walked in, I asked them, can I take a shower? Hoping that somebody said something different because I couldn't shower
Oh,
because of
wow.
the things that they had stuck to me.
Yeah. The
And
monitor.
in my
Yeah.
mind, I'm like, well, why don't we just reattach it? But
Right.
every time we take this Tylenol for this fever to break, it made
Mm-hmm.
me sweat like it was bad. And I just wanted to take a shower so bad. That's all I wanted to do. But the fever finally broke Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I was so excited. It got to the point where I knew it needed to stay steady um, for 48 hours. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
if it was real or what. I just knew that I could always hear the nurse before they came in, and I just remember that twice. And it's kind of shameful. I'm being honest about this now. Maybe 2 times I would grab my water, get ice, and put it in the bottom of my tongue
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to go home so bad. So the first time it came back 98. I'm like, okay, this is gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
The next time, Miss Barbara Nurse Barbara came in. I had ice under my tongue, and I think it said like 96. She said, "Baby, did you just drink something cold?" I said, "No." So of course,
Trying
so
to
of
get
course, yeah, of course, I think she knew I was lying because she came back
on.
15 minutes later, and to our surprise, it really was 98.
Oh,
It really
praise
was.
God.
So
Wow.
that began the process of my healing. And I
Yeah.
remember I have a good friend who works in the hospital. He was at home, and I just remember every time I took my temperature, I would text him my numbers. But on
Hmm.
that day, I think I called him like, "All right, we at 98 for the third time." So it was a again, I wouldn't wish it on anyone because I
Yeah.
know my experience isn't like everyone else's who is still going through.
Hmm.
Um, and that's I'm thankful to be here where I
Yeah.
am. I really
Yeah.
am because I do realize that there are people who were pushed back to their room the same day as me, March 16th, who are still there with a breathing machine, with a ventilator.
Hmm.
And I realize how blessed I am. I know I'm blessed. I don't know.
Yes.
It's a gut punch, and I told you, it's a gut punch to me whenever I hear about anyone who is experiencing this virus.
Yes.
It's rough.
I want to let the audience know what you're describing. For example, when you weren't able to take a shower and what you had on your chest. So commonly, everyone there are monitors for they were monitoring your heart,
Hmm.
and when someone is in a febrile state. Now, I'm not a cardiologist and I'm not an internal medicine doctor, but I'm a medical doctor and I have to know a little bit about the body.
Right.
So I'm going to go too into detail, but sometimes when the body, well, all the time when you're in a febrile state or when your body is at a high state of temperature,
Hmm.
the heart is going to overwork itself. So what they wanted to make sure that you weren't experiencing, like they did the EKG and they continue to monitor you, was like a heart attack, for example, or an arrhythmia.
Okay.
Um, Especially with fevers, I think more commonly arrhythmia in this case, because
Hmm.
they probably would check that you're young, you're vibrant, you were working out before
Yeah.
this happened, and so the risk of the fever and how long it stayed probably likely related to that. I do want to ask you, Kenneth, if Miss Barbara's listening right now, what would you say to her? Can you hear me okay, Kenneth?
You here?
Yes, I'm here. I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. This is the Wi-Fi. It's the Wi-Fi. Can you hear me okay now?
Hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's barely. It's going in and out. And if you need to
Okay.
disconnect and reconnect, that's fine.
One moment. Let me.
Okay, no problem. I can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry. Um,
Oh, it's okay.
if Miss Barbara was listening to me right now, first of all, I definitely would give her a hug. Um, and just tell her thank you because first of all, thank you probably would not even be enough for the assistance that she provided. There were some times where I know she went over and beyond her call of duty. Once I gained my appetite back, I really still wasn't hungry, but I began to get thirsty and tired of drinking water. And I just remember her. Um, they only supposed to give me 2 juices per day, I believe. But she would come in with her side pockets full of them. And she said, "Baby, you got to start drinking something, but do not neglect your water." And I don't know. It just certain things she would just, and then she would always have conversation for me about that was just uplifting, um, about just staying positive, staying prayed up. I I don't know. Thank you would not be enough, but I definitely would say a thank you probably 1,000 times to her.
Yes, yes. Shout out to all of our nurses. Thank
Really.
you, Miss Barbara, for being an outstanding nurse and providing ultimate care for Kenneth. We really appreciate your efforts. We really appreciate you. And it sounded like she actually was able to connect with you and in a
Yes.
serious manner and just let you know that, hey, I'm here to support you, I'm here for you, but this is what has to happen
Yep.
in order for you to go home. And I just thank God that Miss Barbara was in the right place at the right
Right
time,
time.
serving
That's
the right person. Yes, exactly, serving you. So God, that's
you,
awesome.
before she would always get off around 11:30 ish
Mm-hmm.
p.m. or 11 o'clock p.m. It was a night shift when the evening shift she worked, and I just remember at the closing of her shift, I would always ask her, "Hey, how's everybody else doing on the floor?
Yeah.
Are they recovering?" And she would always say, "Baby, it's gonna be a process for some of us." And I said, "What you mean?" She said, some of them are like you, almost ready to go home, but others, it may be a while.
Yeah.
And I just to be like, oh my goodness, this can't be real.
Yeah. And that was my next question for you, Kenneth. Overall, just while you were in the hospital, and we'll definitely, if that's okay, transition to your recovery period. But
Mhm.
while you were in the hospital, I mean, what were your thoughts? When did you first think that this was potentially COVID? Did you have any other thoughts going, while you were in the hospital and in receiving treatment?
To be honest, when they told me I was not going home and I saw all of the protection on the two nurses and the doctor who was talking to me, in the back of my mind, the only thing I'm thinking is no way. There's no way that everything I've been watching on the news
Mm-hmm.
has gotten me. Me?
Mm-hmm.
So that's when initially when I began to just think that this is very possible. Very possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought that the moment they told me that I had pneumonia, so I kind of strayed away from the COVID. But once again, even Miss Barbara, she began to educate me about some things with the pneumonia. And she was the one that told me that pneumonia goes hand in hand with the COVID-19. I said, well, damn, okay, so this is real.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be honest, it got to the point, that's when I had to really turn the TV off. I had to stop watching the news because going through what I was going through, feeling what I was feeling, um, it put me in a mindset of fear and a very dark, it was more so fear than anything. And what I mean by fear is just, you're alone. You can't really express your fear to everyone else because you don't want to have them worried.
Right.
So,
Right.
just asking you how, my thought process during that time, um, to say I was scared, that would be an understatement.
Yeah. What got you through those moments when you were alone? What
Ooh. So, first, I mean, definitely my wife, speaking to her all the time, and FaceTiming, with my family,
Mhm.
which sometimes became hard as well because, again, having a 3-year old and a 1-year old, they don't understand. And of course, my daughter, she's so consistent. She's still saying, "Daddy, are you okay?"
Yeah.
So I can't say, "No, baby, I'm feeling bad." So I still have to be Superman.
Right.
Regardless on what's going on, I'm still Superman. Or she likes Batman. So whoever I have to be that day, that's who I am.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but my wife, my brother, and my mother,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
that that consumed my time. I mean, you know, there were times I would just sit out and look out the window, trying to figure out when am I going home.
Mhm.
There were times I would just FaceTime, not even say a word, just cry.
Mhm.
And there were times when I would FaceTime and we would just pray.
Mhm. That's
But
right.
it was um it was rough
Yeah.
mentally initially. When I start feeling better, that's when I'm like, okay, I'm ready
Yeah.
to go home. I think when the
Yeah.
nurse walked in, that's the first thing I said. Hey, good morning. I'm ready to go home. And I know I got on their nerves, except Miss Barbara. I like Miss Barbara.
Miss
I
Barbara's our
love Miss
angel.
Barbara. Yeah, Miss
Yes.
Barbara. She looked out for me.
I can understand why. I can understand why. Thank God for your family. Thank
Yes.
God for people in your family that are believers,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in the power of prayer, as you stated, and are believers that things can work out and they will
Definitely.
work out.
Definitely.
I often feel that a part of our healing is believing that we're going to be healed.
Yes.
And that often can start our healing, right?
All the time.
Um, mhm. So, I believe that sometimes God places people like Miss Barbara and your family, and reverting to the power of prayer, and your children, to remind you that, hey, I'm valued. I know I'm going to get through this. I'm going to see them. I'm going to hug them again. Sometimes God places people in your path to get you motivated, that and to continue to have these positive affirmations that, hey, this is only a snapshot, but there's a bit more journey to go, and I know I'm going to get there to the
Yep.
end. You got to start the healing process.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually something, not to stray away from the interview, but that's actually something that people do not discuss enough of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes, I tested positive of COVID-19, but people seem to forget sometimes there is a huge impact that's left on that individual's family.
That's right.
And for example, even right now, just jumping back to where I am now, it's a big adjustment for what we're going through right now. Yes, I'm still in isolation. I'm home now. I'm feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
No symptoms. I'm still upstairs by myself. My wife is downstairs. I haven't seen my kids in 3 weeks, and that's a struggle for me.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
you and I discussed before, I understand that it's for their protection, and that's what I just have to keep, speaking in my head, praying about, knowing that this is all for them, because at some point I know I will have to protect them from this crazy virus that's out here.
Yes. Yes. And I can only imagine, as a parent, what that feels like, having this sense of selfishness and wanting to hold your kids, wanting to kiss your wife, and, be relieved that you're out the hospital, but at the same
Hmm.
token, be that safeguard for them, that
Yep.
protector, and understanding that, hey, if I were to come into contact with you all, there is a possibility that this can spread to the
Exactly.
rest of the family. Yeah.
Mhm.
Did your doctors ever give you a particular protocol when you went home? Did they tell you where to be in the house, what you can and cannot do, how long you had to be quarantined?
So there was some confusion as far as the quarantine timeline. The only guidelines that they really did question me about prior to me being released was, who would I be around? Is there somewhere in the house you can go where you will not potentially cross paths with everyone else?
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are the things that were, and as far as us, it's easy for us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God for my mother-in-law and the grandparents. But as far as the miscommunication and the confusion, the timeline for the quarantine. So most documents shows 14 days. All right.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is there's confusion about, if someone spends 7 days in the hospital in isolation, does that consider under the quarantine timeline? So the nurse, some nurses said yes. Um, my friend and my primary doctor says no. So, doing the math now, I was released, I think, on the 23rd, I believe. So I'm technically just beginning week 2.
Okay. So you've actually started the quarantine process at your home.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yep. So it actually starts when you're released, not when
Mm-hmm.
you're actually in isolation at the hospital.
And I think that's an important factor to know, and something
Hmm.
to verbalize, because again, we still are learning about this, this virus, and there's no standard protocol for this virus.
at
And
all.
so, right. And so what I'm hearing is that you always have to be more, safe than sorry. You always have to overdo it, right? You
Hmm.
always have to make sure. You always, want to make sure that you're out of that window of reinfection or window of someone else contracting the virus, and yet and still want to still be safe for yourself and others that are around you. So it
Yep.
definitely makes sense why, and thank God that you started at home, for
Definitely.
sure. How has your recovery process been like for you? I know you mentioned originally of not being able to see your kids for the past 3 weeks, and being away from your family within the same home. How has the recovery been for you?
For me, recovery has been great. Um, I'm a competitor. Yeah, I may have put on maybe 60 pounds from my college athletic days, but I still see myself as a competitor and somebody who's just the mindset that I'm not going to let it beat me.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling good. I've been getting up, working out, walking on the treadmill downstairs, as far as in my garage. Um, but honestly, I think my recovery has been going great. I have no symptoms. I'm feeling good. My stamina is getting much better, and I'm feeling good. I really am.
Awesome. That's wonderful to hear. Wonderful to hear. I'm so happy to hear that. So happy and enthused to hear that. How's your family doing? How are they doing?
They're doing well. It's of course it's still an adjustment.
Yeah.
Um, Again, I haven't seen the kids in 3 weeks. Maybe haven't seen my mom in almost a month now.
Hmm.
So getting used to this new norm is is how we're coping, and
Hmm.
we understand what's going on. We just staying positive the entire time, and really just making the most of it, being creative for the most part.
Yes,
So
yes, definitely,
um,
definitely.
that's it.
Is your daughter feeling saying that, "Hey, Dad, you're looking better now"? Is she
No,
giving you? No,
she's
okay.
having too much fun at her grandmother's.
Okay, I see. That's good. But you do get to FaceTime your daughters and
Yes.
being able to communicate with them.
Hmm.
Wonderful. That's good. And I'm sure they see you at least in their home. So I'm sure that's giving them some reassurance
That
as
they'll be
well.
home soon.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Exactly. Are there any points that you would like to make to our audience today that you feel passionate about, in regards to your experience and what you're hearing and what people have said to you? I know you started to talk about this earlier, that there were some parts that felt very frustrating when people were saying, doing things of behaviors where they felt, they appeared to be immune,
Hmm.
asking questions that were just common sense questions, right? And going and having gone through an experience such as this, Kenneth, what major, what points would you like people to know, from our
Um,
listeners? What points would you like to make?
the first thing is really just expressing what I've learned from it. And unfortunately, the one thing I can say I've learned is so disheartening. I've learned how irresponsible and selfish many of my peers truly are. And that alone had become so frustrating to me. It got to a point where, of course, TV was extremely boring. I'm not even a TV watcher, but sometimes we all use social media, and I would see comments that would blow my mind, and this mindset, even I would get direct messages on Facebook and Instagram. I even had some friends call me. We still have people who still believe for some reason that we cannot get this virus. And
What do you mean by we, Kenneth?
we as African Americans, black people cannot contract this virus. And to me, ignorance is no excuse.
Right.
It's too much information that's out here. It's too much that has happened. I mean, you look at our local hospitals. I'm sure even there, our hospitals here in Atlanta, all of them are maxed out. They're maxed out. They're not even testing potential new patients right now, regardless
Mm.
of the symptoms.
Wow.
So it's concerning when someone doesn't take this social distancing serious enough to understand why it's needed, and they're still going to the parks, they're still going to the bars and hanging out, but not
Mhm.
understanding that we have potentially many carriers of this virus still out here. Some unable to get tested, or better yet, let's look at my situation. I'm so when I was released, the doctor told me that for me to be released back into population, I would need to be retested, and the test would have to be negative. It was confirmed today that I cannot be tested because they don't have enough tests, and it's not on the priority list. So my first question was, okay, so how do we know that a previous positive carrier of the virus is clear?
Right.
So it's a lot. It's a lot that brought some frustrations. But as far as the things that we can control,
Mhm.
those are the things that kind of just built up frustration the most, because
Yeah.
there are some things that we can do to prevent the spread of it.
Mhm.
And I just think that we owe it to ourselves. I think we owe it to our peers, our community, to just
Mhm.
look out for one another. How can
Mhm.
I say I'm looking out or I care about my community if I'm going outside every day, or
Right.
going to the grocery store, or going to, as far as Atlanta Piedmont Park? It, it,
Mhm.
it's it's not possible. It's not
Right.
possible. I see people every day having group workouts, walks in the parks. I, it's unreal. It's unreal. It's frustrating to me, and I just look at it as, again, it's like another gut punch. And I look at this entire thing. It's bigger than me. It really is. Everybody's story will not be mine, unfortunately. Um, Again, there are people in the hospital right now who are truly suffering from this virus. And like I was saying earlier, and I tell people every day, it is truly bothering. It's almost like a gut punch whenever I hear somebody going through, um, because I just I just know that everybody can't handle even what I went through. My little 7 days compared to some people being there 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that's nothing. And that's why I make sure I don't complain. This whole thing about me speaking about it now is all about awareness, so people can understand that this thing is real. It's real. Our people are dying, and unfortunately, people still don't have answers. My good
Mhm.
friend, he even told me today on another live. He just told me that basically they won't really have an answer to this entire crisis until next fall. So it's um it's concerning. It's concerning to
Right.
say the least.
Yes. Yes. Kenneth, thank you so much. Thank
No,
you
thank you.
for sharing your story. Yes, you. Thank you. Thank you for being forthcoming about this experience, vulnerable, for sharing the story of how you got through the key players like Miss Barbara, your family, your girls,
Miss
your wife.
Barbara.
Yeah, Miss Barbara. We really appreciate it because I can't imagine. There's no way. There's no way I can't imagine. Even as a physician, I've seen nothing like this. I've seen nothing
Right.
like this in my lifetime. And what scares me about that is, even in the history books, when we look at Ebola and we look at other, coronavirus mutations or other, types, this is something like, this like a bad dream. Like I cannot think of any other illness that I've even studied in med school, the illnesses I've looked up and researched from my own knowledge that looks
Yep.
like this. And so, even as a physician, it's very difficult to even imagine if my own patients, are experiencing some of these symptoms,
Right.
and if it's been, part of the journey. And I just appreciate you sharing your journey, so that people, it's important for people that can find some identification in your story. That's important. So whether that be a male, if they look like, if they're Black, if they're young, if they are a family man, if they're a husband, if they're a brother, if they're a son, there are so many people that are listening to you, and they will catch you on the replay, and they'll find some component that they can identify with you in your story. And my prayer, I know our prayer collectively, is that they listen to you. And on my screen, you're not moving, and that's okay, because I think that that's not coincidental. It's important that you listen to Kenneth's story, y'all. It's important that you hear his words, you heed to his story, and like he said, he made it. He's in recovery, and yet still there's still some, we still don't know how long that it's going to take. We still don't know if Kenneth can be reinfected. We still don't know, a lot of pieces to the story, but the hope is that he's basically recovered from the worst part of it.
Yes.
He and his family are practicing the standards of sanitation, and they're staying in the home. They're prayer warriors, and and hope believers in his family. That's a part of the story.
Yes.
And so, that is getting him through as well. And sharing your story is ultimate, Kenneth. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, really appreciate you.
Am I still
Thank
frozen?
you.
Am I still frozen, or can you see me?
Yes, still frozen, unfortunately.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on.
No, but that's okay, because I think, again, sometimes we have to cut off some of our senses
Okay.
in order to listen.
Yes.
And
That's
so,
right.
that takes away, kind of what's in front of us. And, we're more focused on what we're hearing. And so my prayer is that people hear the story and are impacted by it. And hopefully that changes those who are not believers to how this can impact all of us, that will actually start to sink in and change, their decision making, not just for them, but for all of us.
Yeah,
All of us.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So God bless you. And I want to have you back. I want to check in and see how things are going. God bless
Definitely.
you.
God bless you too, and I will keep you posted on everything.
Please do. Please do. God bless your family. Thank your wife for us. Thank your children for the time. Yes. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Very, very soon.
That'll work.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you to all of our listeners. I can't go through all the names here, but we're very thankful that you're sharing, that Kenneth, they're giving you blessings. They're saying, God bless you. Stay strong, Kenneth. I'm praying for you. Thank you, Pastor Kevin Murrell, for your support. Miss Barbara, do you know Miss Barbara's last name by any chance? There is a Barbara on here.
Is it
Not
Barbara
sure.
Lewis?
Yes.
That's
yes.
my mother. That's my mother.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mom of Kenneth. We really appreciate you being here during the interview. And your mom is just sending blessings and blessings and blessings while we're throughout our conversation as well. Your twin brother was here as well, as long, in addition, to many of your family members and your friends. So just wanted to share that with you, Kenneth, that they're here for you. They're praying for you. And we all are. So God bless you, sir. Yes. Yes. See you soon, darling. Take care.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.